For those of you who have been wondering, waiting, what happened to the Patriot nurse and is she recovered from her illness? Well, wait no longer. She has a brand new update over at the Patreon channel for those of you who are supporters. She has many different levels, I believe 4 or 5, but I do believe she has a $1 level over there for those of you who want to sign up and get updated. She has put posts up over the last month or two that have detailed the cascade effect of different things that have caused her to have to step away from the platform and take some time to take care of herself. Now, personally, I think one good trip to Florida and the Fountain of Youth would have done it, but that's just my opinion. So keep her in your prayers, but if you want an update, head over to not the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, but the Patriot Nurse Patreon channel. She has everything you need to know, everything you'd want to know for sure, and it looks like she may have turned the corner, but once again, always keep praying. As always, thank you to everyone who has shown up here and engaged in the comment section, liked, shared, subscribed. I'm sure we both appreciate this in a way that you can't really understand. It makes a huge difference, especially those of you who have showed up at the Patreon channels. My channel only has one level, $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. Gloves off. Patriot Nurse will confirm that, by the way. She's been on Patreon for a long time, and all of her controversial stuff she puts over there. So, once again, would love to have you there. It's fully refundable first 90 days, so there's really no risk, and it's a great way to get in touch with creators that you support, that you enjoy on a much more personal level. You can direct message over there, and as time permits and as I have the ability to, I do get with the messages and I will respond. So anyway, there is a story out though, and it actually ties quite a few things together. Antarctica, something that's happening in Europe with the energy crisis, and believe it or not, the quote unquote climate crisis. Now, a lot of people have misunderstood my opinion on the climate crisis. I'm of the opinion that the planet can have varying climates over time. Now, things that exacerbate it, things that make it better, make it worse, those things can also occur as well. Pumping billions and billions of tons of CO2 into the atmosphere over decades and decades and decades, well, it couldn't possibly have no effect. That's really, against the scientific method. You can't do things like that without there being some type of an effect. Now, am I the guy that's going to say you're going to have to go get an electric car and give up your SUV? No. I believe in what they call man-enhanced climate change, and I believe we should probably focus more on the effects and mitigating them and preparing for them than pointing fingers and blaming. That's my opinion on it. Now, what are we talking about? Brits forced to turn to warm banks with 16 million people in the UK unable to heat their homes. 16 out of 60, by the way, million people unable to heat their homes. Thousands of public spaces have been opened up for people to warm up. Some 3,300 warm banks have been opened across the UK as millions of people face the prospect of fuel poverty this winter. The Met Office predicts that the temperatures could drop to minus 10 degrees Celsius in some locations over the next week. Now, you can read through this article. I'll give it to you. It's from RT. It talks about, of course, and it has to do with Russia and the war and all this type of thing. But there's also this other article about British farmers warning of a food supply crisis as well. Now, when you step back and you look at what's really happening, people think, wow, minus 10. That's crazy cold for the United Kingdom. Well, look at the globe. It is on the same latitude as northern Canada. Now, some might say, well, Florida Maquis, it's always had much more balmy, much better weather. Why is it all of a sudden getting this ridiculously cold? Minus 10. That's crazy. Well, I have found an absolutely fantastic graphic, and I mean, this is absolutely the best I've ever seen, about the haline cycle. Now, for those of you that don't know what the haline cycle is, it's a current, and I'm just going to go ahead and play this forward, that moves water very slowly, and the climate is affected by this. It's basically as the water gets less saline, pardon me, it gets denser. And as the water gets denser, it sinks. Now, that water sinking has to displace water, and that has to go somewhere. So that water has to find a place where it can rise. Well, it doesn't change the salinity until it gets way farther south. So it creates this current, this conveyor belt that brings warm air and warm weather from southern regions of the planet up to northern climes like Great Britain. That's why Great Britain is so much warmer than the same latitude in Canada. And as you can see it here, the deeper water is fresher water. So it's denser. The saltier water is less dense, and it's at the surface. So by the time it gets down here to this region, it's at low levels, and it circulates back up and over. Now, here's what's happening. Here's the whammy. Antarctica is dumping because of climate change, whatever reason you want to ascribe to it. Tons and tons and tons, and I mean areas, lakes the size of Great Britain, into the oceans, making the oceans less saline down here where they need to be more to keep this current going. And this is a global current, as you can see, there's all the way around the globe here. So I just wanted to show this. I'll give you the link to this too, where you can find it. I'm using a couple different desktops here. This is what's happening. Cool, high salinity water with increased density sinks to form North Atlantic deep water. And basically that current is what has brought warmer weather to Great Britain than it would normally have had. And now that's starting to end. And here's, of course, Antarctica now has more than 65,000 meltwater lakes. You see, as we go into wintertime in the northern hemisphere, now it's going into summertime in the southern hemisphere. And it's mind-boggling the amount of water that's being dumped into the oceans, and they're becoming less and less and less saline. Now, weirdly enough, they have found this creature in both Great Britain and in Antarctica. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the plesiosaur. It's largely attributed to what the Loch Ness Monster might be. It's basically got a big body with flippers and varying lengths. Some have very, very long necks. Well, they found in Australia one of these creatures, but they rarely find it with the head attached. They found one. But how many of you remember the find that I had in Antarctica? The ones that they have found in Antarctica of these creatures are filter feeders. They have big, huge mouths, but they feed like baleen whales and blue whales, where they use a sieve, basically. They strain the plankton out of the water. So they're technically carnivores, but they vary in size. Now, here's the real key about this. This is 100 million year old fossil, is Australia's first complete plesiosaur skeleton found in the outback. From Answers in Genesis, though, it talks about where they find these things. Were they living there, or were they washed there by some huge flood? And that's going down a completely different road. But first known marine reptile with a sieve for a mouth. It's a very different adaptation. Now, what does this have to do with anything we found in Antarctica? This Elasmosaurus, compared to the 1.8 meter tall person, shows it to be, and this is science talking, not me, about 14 meters long. Now, let's go to Antarctica. I'm sure a lot of you remember this find. It's from the Mertz Valley. It's from probably 4 years ago. I was searching through this area, which, by the way, has a ton of evidence of activity all through this area. There is so much stuff to find. We found dozens of things. There's dozens more to be found. But one of the biggest things that I'd found was in this area right by this cave that looks to be like there's something laying on the ice. that looks a great deal like an Elasmosaur. Now, I don't know if it's a fossil or if it's an actual creature or if it's something that's just been uncovered by the huge amount of melting water, ice, water in Antarctica. It's one of these unforeseen consequences kinds of things of people who want to talk about climate change and global warming and whatever political, doesn't matter. There's going to be unforeseen things that are going to be benefits. To me, this is one of them. I believe there's all sorts of things to be found in Antarctica, probably more than science wants to admit. Now, we'll keep zooming in here. Do you see the body? You can almost see where the flippers were right here, and then this long, snaky neck right here. Now, remember, they said this creature was about 14 meters long, right? Let's get our ruler measure tool out and let's measure. We'll start here. Move along the body. Well, the body here is about 6 meters. As we follow it around the curve, it is 14.8 meters. I mean, it's literally, what are the odds that it would look like an Elasmosaur and, from satellite imagery, would be the exact size science said an Elasmosaur would be? To me, this is kind of smoking gun type of stuff. And you see this red back here? This might be something where these things might still be alive down there. And there might be a civilization under the ice that knows how to catch them and use them like man has used whales and different large creatures for centuries and centuries. And we see evidence of stuff like this. There's another huge creature laying on the ice up here that looks like it almost might be a giant squid. You see that kind of the squid-shaped head up here, and then the long body and the tentacles laying here? It's kind of disjointed. But let's go ahead and measure this real quick. Now this is much, much larger. It looks like this tentacle is kind of wrapped around here. So it's looking like about 33 meters. That's about 100 feet long. Now, I don't know how long or how big the biggest giant squid ever measured was, but I think it's somewhere near there. It's something in that range. But even if this was a little bit bigger, polar gigantism would explain it. We've talked about that in other videos, how there's even the little pill bugs, the tiny pill bugs out in the garden that you used to go play with when we were kids. The ones that are in the polar regions are literally the size of your hand. But as you look through this area, this region of Antarctica, it's called the Mertz, MERTZ Ninnis, NINNIS, Mertz-Ninnis Valley. You find things and see things that just make absolutely no logical earthly sense whatsoever. It looks like here, I don't know if I can zoom in on this quick enough. You've got this mountain range, and then all of a sudden you see this kind of light shadow. And when you look here, it looks like there's some type of a creature standing here, casting this shadow. You can literally see it. Here's the creature. Here's the shadow. There is just stuff all over down here that is evidence of activity. Now, this is, of course, historical imagery. Whether this area looks exactly like this now, I don't know. But here's another. This looks like almost an antenna array. Look at how skinny this is, this shadow. How could anything, if this was some wind-blown hellscape of ice, rock, and snow, could something this tall and skinny survive? This looks like statuary or some type of buildings. I mean, there are things all over Mertz Nennis. And once again, down in the comment section, or yeah, first pinned comment, I will put the coordinates for this. You can go through here and you can find so much stuff. This here looks almost like another saucer craft. You can spend all day doing this here. So I will leave it there, but once again, it's, to me, too much to be a coincidence. They say it's 14 meters. It's got a big body and a long neck. We find something with a big body and a long neck laying on the ice in Antarctica that's 14 meters long. It's just that simple. I don't know how you really get around that. So, and once again, science has also said they found these exact creatures both in Antarctica and in England. So that current that they're talking about, that would confirm it. They would just follow the current, follow the food, which is what most animals do. So anyway, once again, keep Patron Nurse in your prayers. If you want an update directly from her, head on over to Patreon. And like I said, I think she's got multiple different levels. You can sign up and you can stay up to date yourself and know without having to rely on other channels or other sources. So I will leave it there. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.